Welcome to Like and Subscribe Kitchen. I'm Josh. Has everybody washed their hands? So my pan is nice and hot. I threw the butter in. If you're going to make this vegan, obviously that's going to be olive oil or some other kind of non-dairy oil. Once that is hot, it's a lot easier, especially when you're using the whole onion, to bring the pan to the onion and just push it in instead of trying to like grab some, throw it in the pan. That stuff is now burning while you still have some on the board. Just a whole lot easier movement to drop it in. Though now, with that onion, it's going to take usually 5 to 7 or 8 minutes for that to soften. That's on a medium heat right now, and we really don't want to get color on the onions, we just want to soften them. So a lighter heat is the better way to go with that. While I'm doing that, make sure that I'm not burning my onions.
Hey Josh, what if you wanted to use fresh tomatoes instead of canned tomatoes?
Absolutely. What you totally can. What I usually do when I'm doing it with fresh tomatoes instead, and you want to make sure you have a good amount, is I will usually roast them first. So just cut them in half, throw them onto a sheet pan with a little bit of oil, maybe a little bit of salt, and basically just roast it till you start getting that nice brown color. It's totally fine if you just throw them in raw to this too, but it's going to take a little bit longer to cook since essentially the canned tomatoes are already stewed. So you're going to increase the cooking time if you use raw, whereas if you're using a roasted tomato, it both has a little bit better flavor to it, and it will make the soup cooking time quicker. But that's a good question. My onions are starting to soften significantly now. So at this point, especially with soups, if you're using dry herbs, you want to put them in at the beginning. If you're using fresh herbs, you want them in towards the end. So time to add that. Add the oregano to it. It will become really fragrant in about 20 or 30 seconds. Just, the heat opens that up a little bit. And then the next thing up is the flour. So if you do not already have, like I did, a pre-measured tablespoon of flour, this is a good time to go grab one. I like to measure all of my stuff out early, just so at this point I'm not scrambling like, oh no, I need the measuring spoon. Wait, where'd the flour go? And meanwhile my onions are burning. So we avoid that. And the tablespoon of flour right in there. We're basically coating the onion with that flour. And that will start to brown a little on the bottom, which is kind of what we want. That flour will probably be sticking to the bottom of your pan, which is fine because the next step, adding the tomatoes, will be able to get to scrape a bunch of that off. So now that there's liquid in there, you could, if you're scraping the bottom of the pan, you could kind of feel it's a lot smoother, a lot easier to pick all that little cooked flour up. Boom. 2 cans of tomatoes. And then my half a cup. Oh no, I forgot the red pepper flakes. That should have gone in with the oregano. Alright, well, it's not going to kill anything. And now we will add that milk. Half and half. Basically give that a good stir, and now we want that to come up to a boil, so I'm going to throw the lid on there. Alright, well, my soup looks like it's basically ready to blend at this point. Oh, and I should also give the warning, anytime you're blending something hot like this, be careful with it. You want the end of the immersion blender fully in the liquid, otherwise it's going to splatter back up at you when you turn it on, and it's boiling. It's pretty hot right now. You're going to hurt yourself, so don't do that.
If I have an immersion blender.
Do you have any sort of blender or food processor? Nope.
Let's say I don't.
I would, well, if you're old school and have a food mill, that would totally work too, but I imagine you don't. Then what I would do with my handy wooden spoon is basically try to break up the tomato pieces as small as you can. It will totally, I mean, it will taste like soup. It'll work just fine. If I'm going to put cheese and other things on it, I will put the cheese on first just so the heat of the soup lets it melt just a little bit. Boom, boom, boom. I have a squeeze bottle of olive oil because I have fancy things like squeeze bottles, and it just makes putting a little drizzle on top easier. And then finish that off with a little bit of basil there, and that looks like lunch to me. Oh yeah.
Y'all, that looks so good.
If you learned something in this video, hit that like button and consider supporting us on our Patreon page.